home, two lifeless bodies. It was Jean Hackman and Betsy Oroa. Their dog lay nearby, also motionless. The security team immediately dialed 911. Within minutes, deputies from the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office were on the scene. However, what they found only deepened the mystery. There were no signs of forced entry, no shattered glass, no broken locks, no overturned furniture. It didn't look like a break-in. It didn't appear to be a robbery. Everything inside was in its proper place, and yet something was undeniably wrong. Betsy was discovered near the bathroom counter, as if she had suddenly collapsed. Jean was found in another part of the house, a pair of sunglasses beside him, as though they had slipped from his hand the moment he fell. One of their dogs had died, but the other two were still alive. If something lethal had spread through the house, why had some survived while others hadn't? And why had no one heard from them in over a week? Investigators moved swiftly. Autopsies were ordered, and the crime scene was meticulously analyzed. But nothing seemed to add up. There were no visible injuries, no struggle, and no immediate cause of death. At first, authorities leaned toward natural causes. Hackman was 95 and Betsy was 65. Could it have been a tragic accident or a sudden illness? The couple had always been private, perhaps they had been sick and no one knew. But if that were the case, why had they died in separate parts of the house? And why had no one called emergency services earlier? Then came the most unsettling detail, the eerie stillness. The house was undisturbed, frozen in time. Nothing was out of place. Yet something about the scene felt off. Investigators couldn't shake the feeling that they were overlooking something crucial. As authorities delved deeper, they uncovered something even more chilling, evidence suggesting this was no ordinary tragedy. If their deaths were natural, why did the crime scene look staged? That was the question investigators couldn't ignore. The setting was too perfect, too still. Everything remained untouched as if nothing had happened. And yet 2 people were dead. The autopsies yielded even more baffling results. There were no external injuries, no bruises, no cuts, no defensive wounds, nothing to suggest that Hackman or Betsy had endured a violent attack. Yet something still didn't feel right. To rule out environmental causes, investigators ordered toxicology tests. The first theory they explored was carbon monoxide poisoning, a silent killer capable of seeping into homes undetected. If a gas leak had occurred, it could have explained their deaths. However, test results came back negative, no traces of carbon monoxide or any other dangerous gases in the air. That theory was dismissed. Then there was Betsy. She had been found near the bathroom counter with pills scattered around her. It appeared as though she had collapsed suddenly. But what kind of medication had she been taking? Could she have overdosed? And if so, why had Jean also died? Could they have both suffered a medical emergency at the same time? Such a coincidence would have been tragic, yet it still didn't explain everything. Another mystery was the condition of the house. Valuables remained untouched. Jewelry, electronics, and even cash sat in plain sight. If this had been a robbery, why was nothing stolen? And if theft wasn't the motive, then what was? Adding to the confusion was the state of the doors. The front door was unlocked, but the back door was found slightly ajar. Had someone entered? Had someone left? Or was this just another puzzling piece that didn't make sense? The most chilling discovery of all was the estimated time of death. Based on the condition of their bodies, authorities concluded that Jean and Betsy had been dead for at least several days. Days when no one noticed their absence. No calls from either of them. No signs of distress. It was as if time had frozen inside the house. But if no one had realized, who could be certain of what had truly happened? Had Betsy known something that put her in danger? Or had they both fallen victim to something far more sinister? With no clear cause of death, detectives turned to technology for answers. The timeline didn't make sense. When traditional investigative methods failed, detectives had to go beyond. The house had been silently recording every movement, every action. A potential clue could expose what had truly happened. Through the seemingly undisturbed home, tracking the finest detail with unwavering accuracy, the crime scene offered no obvious access points. But something was left behind. The last recorded data stood out. Hackman's body was discovered on February 17th. For at least a week, no one had realized. Calls, texts, location data, visitors, and search histories, no one checking in. If Jean or Betsy had made a call in silence, their lack of communication raised an even bigger question. There was an immediate problem: some recent records were missing. Had they been deleted by the couple themselves, or had someone else tampered with them? Who was the last person they spoke to? Next was a 2025 monthly planner. At first glance, it seemed like an ordinary schedule book filled with routine appointments and reminders. But hidden among its pages was something chilling. The notes suddenly stopped. As if Betsy had planned future events she would never attend. There were no records of medical emergencies, no upcoming doctor visits, no signs of declining health. And yet, both of them were dead. Had something unexpected occurred? Or had they been hiding a secret no one knew about? Then came the third clue: 3 different types of medications scattered around the home. Pills for high blood pressure, thyroid issues, and pain relief. Given their ages, having medication in the house wasn't unusual. What was strange, however, was the way they were found. Some bottles were neatly placed, while others were open with pills spilled near Betsy's body. Had she collapsed while trying to take them? Or had someone deliberately staged the scene to make it appear that way? The fourth clue was Hackman's medical records. At his age, minor health issues were expected. But had he been suffering from something unexpected? Investigators carefully examined his records. No dramatic farewell. No major issues. He simply stepped quietly away from the flashing lights of Los Angeles. This only deepened the mystery. It wasn't just about retirement. If Hackman wasn't sick and hadn't reported any distress, then what had happened to them? Detectives believed something found in the house held the key. One of these items contained something so shocking, the investigation took a darker turn. Why was the front door wide open? The back door barely closed? It was a detail easy to overlook, yet investigators needed to dig deeper. Initially, officers believed the house had been sealed from the inside. Had he made enemies? Had someone from his past come back to haunt him? There were no signs of forced entry, but investigators noticed something else. The front door was completely unlocked. It wasn't just unlocked, the deeper they looked, the more disturbing their findings. It had been left open just enough to raise suspicion. Then they found the phone. This discovery shattered the theory that Jean had passed away in isolation. Why were some numbers missing? Had someone else been there? Investigators knew that in cases like this, a person's last calls often held the most valuable clues. While Jean and Betsy were still alive, they were about to uncover what would change everything. Investigators could no longer ignore the possibility that the scene had been staged. Texts and voicemails, everything mattered. Who they spoke to. What was on their mind. Whether they had requested medication. It was too late. None of it made sense. Investigators turned their focus to Hackman's open door. Could someone have come and gone without detection? Had he reached out for help? Then the strangest part of all, the authorities retrieved all data from both devices. There were patterns. If an environmental poison or gas had been responsible, the couple's dogs would have suffered the same. But some of the dogs had survived. It was as if someone had gone through the property, leaving behind an incomplete cover-up. At least one door had been open. Someone might have spoken to them, someone investigators weren't supposed to know about. Or had it managed to happen on its own? When were those calls deleted? A new clue pointed in a darker direction. Before his death, the more investigators looked, the more suspicious things became. Someone had entered the home. Then came the clue that tampered with everything, one that hadn't been deleted. Authorities played it back, and realized this was no longer just an unexplained tragedy. The message from the phone was not casual. There was fear in the tone, a sense that something was terribly wrong. This wasn't just about a teenager turning into a legend. It was about resilience, silence, and secrets. The voicemail revealed a young voice, one that seemed impossible. After further investigation, authorities uncovered something chilling. It belonged to someone who should have had no reason to hide their identity. By the 1970s, Hackman was a force in Hollywood. This revelation sent investigators back to the crime scene. Then came another disturbing discovery: fingerprints. Not just any fingerprints, ones that didn't match either Jean or Betsy. They had been overlooked in the initial investigation, dismissed as unimportant. But now they meant something. Someone else had been inside that house, someone whose presence had never been accounted for. With this discovery, the entire case took a shocking turn. A new suspect emerged, not a random intruder, but someone with access to the house. Someone who knew their routine. Someone who might have been the last person to see them alive. This wasn't just a case of unexplained deaths anymore. It was beginning to look like a carefully staged crime. But why? A secret too dangerous? Was someone trying to silence Jean and Betsy? Had they stumbled upon a hidden truth that put them in danger? Or was there something buried deep in Hackman's past that had finally caught up with him? The case was far from over. What started as an unexplained tragedy had now turned into something much darker. With every new piece of evidence, the case took shocking twists, raising more questions than answers. The unlocked doors. The missing phone records. The voicemail that shouldn't exist. And now, the discovery of unknown fingerprints inside the house.